Have you ever asked, why is this happening to me? Maybe you lost your job. Maybe someone you trusted walked away. Maybe you failed when you gave everything you had. In those moments, life feels unfair. We immediately label the experience as bad. But what if you simply don't know the ending yet? What if today's disappointment is secretly opening the door to tomorrow's greatest opportunity? The Stoics believe that human beings suffer twice. First, from the event itself, and then from the story they immediately tell themselves about it. Today's story is about an old farmer whose simple answer confused an entire village. Every time something terrible happened, he would smile and say, perhaps. People thought he had lost his mind, until one extraordinary year changed everyone's life forever. The farmer everyone misunderstood. In a quiet valley, surrounded by green hills, lived an elderly farmer named Samuel. He owned very little: a small wooden house, a modest piece of farmland, a vegetable garden, and one beautiful white horse. The horse was unlike any the villagers had ever seen. Strong, graceful, fast. Travelers often stopped just to admire it. Many wealthy merchants offered Samuel enormous amounts of money. I'll pay any price, they said. You'll never find another horse like this. Samuel always smiled politely, then replied, the horse is part of my life. Some things cannot be measured by money. The villagers shook their heads. What a foolish old man. If that horse were mine, I'd sell it tomorrow. Samuel never argued. He simply continued caring for his farm. Every morning he woke before sunrise. He worked quietly. He appreciated simple things: the cool morning air, the songs of birds, the warmth of fresh bread, while others chased more. Samuel practiced gratitude for what already existed. The villagers couldn't understand him. They believed happiness came from gaining. Samuel believed happiness came from appreciating. Then one morning, the horse disappeared. The stable stood empty. The gate had somehow been left open during the night. The villagers rushed to Samuel's farm. We told you this would happen. You should have sold the horse. Now you've lost everything. This is terrible luck. Everyone waited for Samuel to cry, to complain, to blame someone. Instead, he calmly looked toward the distant mountains, then quietly said, perhaps. The villagers stared in disbelief. What do you mean, perhaps? You've lost your greatest possession. Samuel smiled gently. All I know is that the horse is gone. I don't yet know whether this is good or bad. The villagers laughed as they walked away. Poor Samuel. Old age has made him foolish. But Samuel returned to his work. He planted seeds, watered his crops, prepared for tomorrow as if nothing had happened. That evening, while eating dinner alone, he remembered a lesson his own father had taught him years earlier. Never let one day convince you it knows the whole story. Those words gave him peace. He refused to judge an unfinished chapter. The unexpected return. 3 days later, the ground began to shake. The villagers rushed outside. From the hills came the sound of pounding hoofs. Samuel's white horse was returning, but it wasn't alone. Behind it ran 12 magnificent wild horses, healthy, strong, untamed. The entire village watched in amazement. The same neighbors who had pitied Samuel only days before now surrounded him with excitement. You were right. What incredible fortune. You're now the richest farmer in the valley. One man even laughed. You're the luckiest person we've ever known. Samuel looked at the horses quietly, then gave the same answer. Perhaps. The crowd became frustrated. What do you mean? Perhaps. You've gained 12 priceless horses. Samuel gently replied, I know only one thing. The horses have returned. Everything else is a story we are creating. The villagers walked away confused. How could anyone refuse to celebrate such obvious good fortune? But Samuel understood something they did not. Life unfolds one page at a time, and no one knows what the next page contains. Little did the village know, the greatest test was still waiting. The news of Samuel's good fortune spread far beyond the valley. People traveled from neighboring villages just to see the magnificent wild horses. Some came to admire them. Others came hoping to buy one. Many couldn't understand how one old farmer had become so fortunate overnight. Among them was Samuel's only son, Daniel, young, energetic, and eager to help his father. Daniel spent every day trying to tame the wild horses. They'll make our work easier, he said with excitement. Samuel smiled, but his voice remained calm. Be patient. Trust must be earned, not forced. Daniel nodded. Yet, like many young men, he believed determination could overcome anything. The next morning, he climbed onto the strongest of the wild horses. For a few moments, everything seemed under control. Then, the horse panicked. It reared high into the air. Daniel lost his balance. The animal threw him violently to the ground. A loud crack echoed through the valley. Samuel rushed to his son. Daniel cried out in pain. His leg was badly broken. The village doctor examined him carefully. "I'm afraid he won't be able to work for many months." The villagers gathered once again outside Samuel's home. Only a week earlier, they had called him the luckiest man alive. Now they shook their heads with sympathy. "What terrible luck. This would never have happened. You should have sold those horses." Samuel looked at his injured son with compassion, then quietly said the same word he had spoken before. "Perhaps." The villagers stared at him in disbelief. "How can you still say that? Your son may never walk properly again." Samuel gently replied, "I know my son's leg is broken. I do not know what tomorrow will bring." The villagers left, convinced the old farmer had lost touch with reality. But Samuel stayed by his son's side. He cared for him without complaining. He focused on what could be done instead of what could not. The man's greatest mistake. As the weeks passed, Daniel became frustrated. "I'll never be the same again," he said. "My future is ruined." Samuel sat beside him. "My son, have you noticed what your mind is doing?" Daniel looked confused. "It has taken today's pain and turned it into tomorrow's certainty. You don't know your future. You only know your present." Those words stayed with Daniel. Modern psychology calls this catastrophizing. It happens when the mind assumes the worst possible outcome before any real evidence exists. A single failure becomes, "I'll always fail." One rejection becomes, "No one will ever love me." One mistake becomes, "My life is over." The Stoics warned against this way of thinking centuries ago. They believed much of our suffering comes not from reality, but from the stories we invent about reality. Samuel understood this deeply. He wasn't pretending pain didn't exist. His son's injury was real, but he refused to let fear write a future that had not yet happened. Every evening, he reminded Daniel, "Do today's work today. Leave tomorrow until tomorrow." Slowly, Daniel stopped asking, "Why me?" and began asking, "What can I do with today?" That single change transformed his outlook. Instead of dwelling on what he had lost, he strengthened what remained. He read, he learned, he observed nature. He developed patience he had never possessed before. Without realizing it, his greatest weakness was quietly becoming one of his greatest teachers. Then, one cold morning, the sound of drums echoed through the valley. Soldiers rode into the village, carrying the king's command. Every healthy young man was to report immediately. A neighboring kingdom had declared war. There would be no exceptions. Families wept. Parents embraced their sons. The soldiers moved from house to house, gathering every able-bodied young man they could find. When they reached Samuel's home, they looked at Daniel's broken leg. The captain shook his head. "He cannot fight." The soldiers mounted their horses and rode away. Silence filled the valley. No one spoke. The same villagers who had called Daniel's injury a terrible tragedy now watched their own sons disappear beyond the hills. Many would never return. Only then did they begin to understand what Samuel had been trying to teach them all along. But the greatest lesson was still to come. The lesson the village never forgot. The village was no longer the same. The laughter had faded. The streets that were once filled with young men had become quiet. Every family waited anxiously for news from the battlefield. Some prayed, some cried, some stared down the dusty road, hoping to see their sons return. Samuel continued tending his small farm, not because he didn't care, but because he understood something the others were only beginning to learn. Life does not stop because we are worried. The seeds still needed water. The crops still needed care. Each morning, Daniel watched his father rise before dawn, grateful for another day. Finally, he asked, "Father, weren't you afraid when the soldiers came?" Samuel smiled. "Of course I was." Courage is not the absence of fear. It is refusing to let fear become your master. Daniel thought for a moment. "Then how do you stay so calm when life keeps changing?" Samuel looked toward the sunrise. "Because I've learned that life is a book. We're only allowed to read one page at a time. When we decide the ending before we've turned the page, we only create unnecessary suffering." The return. Months later, the war finally ended. The surviving soldiers returned home. Many walked with scars. Some carried injuries that would stay with them forever. Others never returned at all. The village mourned those they had lost. One evening, several neighbors gathered outside Samuel's home. There was no pride in their voices now, only humility. One man stepped forward. "We judged too quickly. When your horse disappeared, we called it bad. When it returned with 12 wild horses, we called it good. When Daniel broke his leg, we called it terrible. But that broken leg saved his life. He lowered his head. We never knew the whole story. Samuel nodded gently. Neither did I. The difference is, I never pretended I did. Silence settled over the group for the first time. The villagers understood that wisdom wasn't about predicting the future. It was about responding wisely to the present. The Stoic philosophers believed that events themselves are often neutral. It is our judgment that gives them meaning. A delay can become an opportunity. A failure can become a lesson. A rejection can become a new direction. The Roman Emperor Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Choose not to be harmed and you won't feel harmed. Don't feel harmed and you haven't been." He wasn't denying pain. He was reminding us that while we cannot control every event, we can control the meaning we attach to it. Samuel lived by this principle every day. He didn't celebrate too quickly. He didn't despair too quickly. He waited. He observed. He trusted that time would reveal what emotion could not. The psychology behind patience. Modern psychology supports this timeless wisdom. Our minds naturally rush to conclusions. This habit, often called jumping to conclusions, leads us to make decisions before we have enough information. A delayed reply becomes, "They're ignoring me." A mistake at work becomes, "I'm going to lose my job." A closed door becomes, "My life is ruined." Most of these fears never become reality. The Stoic approach interrupts this pattern with one powerful question. Do I know this for certain? If the answer is no, then don't let your emotions convince you that imagination is the same as truth. Pause. Observe. Wait. Often, clarity arrives where panic once lived. The moral. Not every closed door is a punishment. Not every delay is a defeat. Not every loss is permanent. Sometimes life removes one path, only to reveal a better one you could never have imagined. Patience is not passive. It is the quiet confidence that today's chapter is not the entire story. When life surprises you, resist the urge to immediately label it as good or bad. Instead, remember Samuel's simple reply. Perhaps one word, yet within it lives humility, wisdom, and peace. Closing message. The next time life doesn't go according to your plan, pause before asking, "Why is this happening to me?" Instead, ask, "What might this experience be preparing me for?" That one question has the power to transform disappointment into growth and fear into hope. If this story touched your heart, leave this in the comments. I'll wait before I judge. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications for the next episode in this Stoic storytelling series. In episode 7, you'll hear the unforgettable story of the prisoner who became free inside his minda. Journey that proves no prison is stronger than the one we build within ourselves, and no freedom is greater than mastering our own thoughts. Until then, be patient, stay grounded, and remember, time often reveals that what looked like your greatest setback was quietly becoming your greatest blessing.